argumentative with regard to this state's position. Mr. Valenzuela, I believe, is capable of understanding the implications of the way the question is phrased. Okay, argumentative I reserve for, I will protect witnesses from being badgered or from being harassed, but if I feel that they're capable of answering the question.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'll withdraw my objection.
That's fine. Okay, Mr. Valenzuela, I'm sorry. It seems like it's been minutes since you were asked a question. I can have Mr. Blem re-ask it if you need to. Would that be helpful?
If I could have the question
Mr. Blem, please re-ask your question.
Mr. Valenzuela, you testified that this gentleman was reassigned, and you don't know why, so I will just leave that. Had something to do with his performance, whether skill-wise or duty-wise, that he was reassigned. Was that a way to simply protect yourself in Maricopa County Elections Department in the face of very negative evidence?
Objection, relevance, and form.
Okay. I'll overrule on relevance, and we've already gone over form. So if you can answer, please answer.
So to the question, if I'm looking to protect myself and the county by I'm not sure what we're protecting ourselves. So we reassign somebody to a task because potentially they didn't have a skill set or the tool set, if you will, that to apply. I don't know how that's protecting ourselves or what statement I made that would infer that.
Okay. Have you provided this data set that's marked as Exhibit 20 to any media organizations like ABC News and the Data Guru?
Objection, relevance.
I'll give you a little bit of leeway. I'm not sure where this is going, but this is pretty far removed from the issues.
What's Exhibit 20?
You want to know whether they've disclosed this to any media?
Yes, Your Honor. The reason for that is,
well,
the Data Guru on ABC News last night has been...
Hold on. Well, I'm not bringing in the news. I'm not bringing in any kind of media. We're focused on this courtroom, okay? You can ask him if he's aware of any other public records requests if you want to by media, but that
Mr. Valenzuela, are you aware of any public records requests made by any members of the media with respect to the data set that's been marked as Exhibit 20?
That's a yes or no.
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance and foundation.
Well, that's what it is. Yes or no.
Mr. Valenzuela is not the custodian of records for Maricopa County.
Given that that's the truth, I'll allow him answer the question. If you're able to, Mr. Valenzuela.
No, I'm not aware.
Okay.
Thank you. Let's move on.
Are you aware at all if the data set marked as Exhibit 20 has been shared with any media outlets without making a formal public records request?
Objection, relevance. Objection, foundation. This witness has not seen that exhibit, Your Honor.
Exhibit 20 is admitted, Your Honor. Maricopa County's data.
Right, but
Maricopa County and every employee.
But that's fine. But I'm not going to hold any witness to photographic memory standards.
Your Honor, for clarification, are you speaking about the data set, the Exhibit 20?
The CD-ROM and all.
Your Honor, I don't know how he could possibly testify to that knowledge of the entirety of Exhibit 20 in the data, the CD.
I'm not asking him specifics about the data, whether line 1,327,000 says X, Y, or Z, Your Honor. I'm simply asking if the totality of that data set has been provided to any media outlets in the absence of a formal public records request.
Here's the issue. You can ask him as a private individual, or he's not here as the custodian of record. He's not here to testify as to the entire organization's responses with regard to public records requests. I'm struggling mightily with relevance.
But I'd simply say, Your Honor, that he is he's the designated representative for the Maricopa County Elections Department. He's here every day representing the people of the Elections Department and their work.
That may be true, but the Apex doctrine, and this is not somebody that, this is like asking the President of the United States about who stood guard last night at the tomb of the unknown soldier. I'm not going to infer that he has photographic knowledge of everything. We're fast approaching, well, put it this way. I'm trying to be as lenient as possible with regard to relevance, but now we're far afield of the issue in front of the court. You've asked him one question about whether he has any knowledge of a public records request. He said no. If you want to ask him, I'll let you ask him one more question to the point of, has any knowledge of that information in that CD-ROM being shared with somebody? This is his personal knowledge, not the organization, other than a public records request, other than in this courtroom. You can ask him that.
Ray, do you have any personal knowledge of anyone sharing the contents of Exhibit 20 with anyone outside of Maricopa County Elections Department in the absence of a formal public records request?
As a representative of the department, as soon as a public record request is fulfilled, that becomes public records for any and all media and anybody else who requires. So, but for this particular data set, I am not aware of another public records request, as I haven't been in the office, been in court.
Exhibit 21. You're aware of Exhibit 21, isn't that correct?
I am not. Not just by the number.
Yes.
Standing U.S. been marked as Exhibit 21, and can you tell the court if you are aware of that public records request?
I am.
Did you help fill that public records request? Section, Your Honor, relevance?
Give you some leeway that we're going somewhere quick with this. All right, I'll take your word at it. You can answer it if you're able to, Mr. Valenzuela.
So the question was did I assist? Yes, part and participle to several elements of this request I assisted with.
You actively assisted in the fulfillment of this public records request?
That is correct.
Your Honor.
When you're walking away and talking, I can't hear you.
Oh, I apologize, Your Honor. I'm looking. Okay, this has been admitted then, correct? Okay, then no need. So your answer is you're completely unaware then of any other disclosure of the documents you produced in response to Exhibit 21's record request?
As not being the custodian of records, I am not aware.
You have a formal custodian of records?
We do indeed.
When did that start?
Objection, relevance.
I'm going to keep saying that. We're
all right. We'll switch gears here a little bit. Signature verification. And I don't think you specifically answered this question yesterday, but can it be done at an employee's home?
The review is part of having to be logged into our network. So it requires that element of an individual being on site or at one of the recorder's offices at the present.
Okay, so it's not possible then what you're testifying to log into your network to conduct signature verification from home.
Objection relevance, Your Honor, to the extent that the question is formulated to get any information related to signature verification at any time other than November of 2022.
This was discussed yesterday with him, and I think the very question that you asked
Understood.
previously was asked and answered.
My specific questions, just to assuage their concerns, are specifically related to the general election of November 2022 and whether or not Maricopa County employees, because he has not answered this question yet, Your Honor, are able to log in to the county network and conduct signature verification from home.
Objection,
You're
Your Honor.
asking, wait, yeah, let me clarify it to see if I've understood. You're asking him, is it possible for that to happen? Is that what you're asking?
Objection, Your Honor. This is relevant. He's talking about process. We aren't here trying the process. We're trying whether the existing process happened.
I'm not trying the process, Your Honor. Our next witness will present a great deal of evidence showing. I'm not testifying. I'm making an argument and
Offer of proof.
protecting the record.
No, you're making an offer of
Offer
proof.
of proof. Okay, our next witness is going to present a great deal of testimony that a lot of what is taking place is simply button clicking, button clicking, button clicking.
Mhm.
We want to know if that is taking place outside of the public's purview, Your Honor. That's what we want to know. Because the law in Arizona,
I thank you for your clarification. He answered that yesterday, and I think you asked him if that was being done, and he said no. You're asking today if it's possible for an employee to log in from home to the computer system of the county.
that's what I'm asking, Your Honor. Is it possible?
Not just that, that's poorly phrased. You're asking him, is it possible for an employee to log in from home and do signature verification from home, not just log into the general county's website?
Correct, Your Honor. To log in and perform signature verifications from home.
Okay,
It's a yes or a no question, Your Honor.
I gathered that. Go ahead and answer, Mr. Valenzuela.
If I may take a point of privilege, that is, we do have remote capabilities for several of our staff admin, and I can log into my PC, but it is not a set standard or protocol to do so for signature verification.
So, if I understand the response correctly, Maricopa County employees can log into the county system and perform signature verification from home, correct? Yes or no?
As a protocol, not a standard. Could they? Yes, could the clouds cover the sky and make systems go down? We could have a lot of that, but technically they could log in, admin could log in
And
to our network.
And conduct signature verification from home.
It's not a protocol that we have established for that.
Okay. Mr. Valenzuela, I'm just trying to make sure the record is clear. Yes or no answer, Mr. Valenzuela. Is it physically possible for Maricopa County employees to log in and conduct signature verification from home?
Objection, Your Honor. Form relevance. This is asked and answered.
Your Honor, he keeps saying protocol, smotocol. It's a yes or a no question. Can they do it?
An employee can log in and access all of their PC as if they were sitting in front of that PC remotely. Okay. That are assigned those workstations. Not every employee has such.
Okay. Do you allow your temporary employees remote access?
They do not have workstations assigned to them, nor are they provided that capability, no.
Okay. Change gears a little bit. Do you know someone by the name of Kathleen Nicolaitis?
I do indeed.
And who is she?
She is a certified forensic document examiner who's certified by the ABFDE with those credentials, and she is with Associated Forensic Laboratories, which is the entity that provides the Secretary of State's training to all 15 counties. In addition to that, we have contracted with her prior to the Secretary of State offering this service to train and certify our FTE, our full-time employees and permanent employees, and certified election officers.
Okay. And what is it? Do you have a personal relationship with her or anything?
Objection, relevance.
She's the individual that does all the training for signature verification, Your Honor.
Right. And I think we're pretty far afield at this point.
I just want to understand his relationship, Your Honor, with this individual who conducts their signature verification training.
I don't understand the relevance, so I'm not going to allow that.
All right, Your Honor.
Disdain is another word for that.
All right, and so we talked yesterday about Exhibit 1. Can you please turn to the page that and this I would like to use as a mark to go.
Do you have a page number, please?
And the exhibits haven't been admitted yet. Exhibit 18, I think.
What is Exhibit 1?
If we can point to a page in one of the exhibits that you're about to use, then the answer to your question is yes. Of Exhibit 1?
And it should be titled User 130.
This page is numbered.
All right. Mr. Valenzuela, I suppose I should ask you, have you ever seen this page?
I briefly have
Where?
in today when we were looking at some of the numbers that potentially other witnesses had.
Do you respect the number 130, user 134? User 134.
Your Honor, this is a document. We don't know anything about this document. Who created it? It's not in evidence yet. We would ask that.
Foundation.
Yeah, we would object on face.
I just want to ask him some specific questions about the data, and then I'm going to show a video of user 134. Ask some questions about it.
Your Honor, he's not allowed.
Well, right. So, first of all, this is not data created by the witness,
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Bland.
Your Honor, this is data that's contained in exhibit number 20.
Which the witness testified.
Wait, I thought we were Exhibit 11, page 139, user 134.
It should say user 134, Your Honor.
No, but I have it down as Exhibit 11, page 139. Is that what it is?
Foundation.
We have no idea.
Okay, and who is this data created by? This witness or someone
No,
else?
the data wasn't, the data was created by Maricopa County. What this data represents, Your Honor, are keystrokes on user verification computers. So when a user logs into their workstation, that's how they know how everything we do at work. They hit a button that says to do something, and that's recorded.
Okay,
This
this sounds like you're laying foundation by you testifying, but what I'm concerned about is a demonstrative exhibit. Put it this way, if you want to ask him a hypothetical question with assumptions of certain things, you're able to do that.
That's where I'm going, Your Honor. I want to ask him a hypothetical question.
And lay the foundation for your hypothetical, please. You have to give him the specific variables that you want him to consider, make whatever you want him to assume, and then if he's able to offer an opinion, he can do that.
Mr. Valenzuela, going back to the user that we. Does that look like it might accurately represent his behavior?
Objection to form.
Sustain on form because it goes to foundation. It's assuming there's several leaps in this. Please go back and lay the foundation.
Okay. Let's assume that this data represents user 34 and his approval.
134 or 34?
I'm sorry, we got 34 now.
Your Honor, may I please be heard?
Go ahead.
I'm objecting to foundation because my understanding is, although I can't see it because of the furniture in the courtroom, that there is an exhibit in front of my client, the witness, and that he's looking at it. Okay, there. This, as you can see, what we have here from this exhibit, it's a white page with black ink, red ink, green ink on it. We have no idea what it is. We have no idea who produced it, where it came from. I'm asking for him to provide some foundation before he shows it to the witness and asks him questions on it. Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Right,
Certain facts.
right, but I'm having a hard time following your hypothetical because I don't know what we're asking for him to assume. For his opinion, your question and his answer to have any value, I need to understand the basis for it.
Objection. Sorry, Your Honor. Sorry. Just an objection from us, Your Honor. I candidly am lost. If we're gonna start all over on this issue and lay foundation, that'd be great. I honestly am not able to follow along at this point.
Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Valenzuela, are you a data analyst?
I am not.
Background at all in analyzing data sets such as that contained in Exhibit 20?
Other than reviewing data and obviously pivot table and that kind of for statistics, but not an expert in data analysis.
What is your background in statistics?
I have no background in statistics. It's deriving statistics, example, turnout, early voting participation, those kinds of broad.
And so you can do that math?
Yes.
Okay, how do you do that math? Tell us. How do you compute turnout?
Objection, Your Honor. Relevance.
Join.
This witness is not an expert.
I think.
Okay, he's not an expert.
Wait. Far afield. Let's lay the foundation specifically for this exhibit and then establish the parameters of your question for him so that I understand the basis of what's being asked.
Okay. Mr. Valenzuela, do you have any reason to dispute that this data accurately represents the time performance of user 134 from the date and ended?
Objection is the foundation to the extent that counsel is referring to data on the exhibit for which there's been no foundation laid.
I'm going to sustain it. I'm not going to tell you how to ask the question, but we don't have foundation to ask the question you're posing to
Your Honor.
Just tell us.
Okay. I just wanted one hypothetical question to ask him, but I have to ask him to assume, Your Honor. The assumption I'm asking him to assume is this: that this user and his approval of ballot affidavit envelopes is represented by this line on this graph, Your Honor, over time.
That's the question?
The hypothetical is, if that is consistent with Maricopa County's standards for approving ballot affidavit signatures. That is my question.
Objection, foundation, Your Honor. As regarded his digit on that right hand was pointed to that exhibit for which no foundation has been laid.
Okay. But hypothetically, what you're asking him, the problem is you've been thinking about this examination for a long time, and there are things in your examination, the question you're asking him, that are quantum leaps and assumptions that you're not asking him to assume. And so it lacks foundation. If you want to show him a picture, not representing that it's anything substantive from the case, but this is assuming, and I'm trying to tell you how to ask your question.
And Your Honor, that's I'm showing him this graph and just asking him to assume.
But is this a graph to show you? I don't, as I look at this, I don't know what that graph is. I don't know what any of the axes represent. And you're asking him a hypothetical that doesn't, you're leaving out assumptions. You're not providing all the data. You're just saying, look appropriate.
What I would like you to assume on this graph, this axis here represents the number of ballot affidavit envelopes approved, and that this axis here represents the time taken to approve. Do you understand?
I understand that explanation, yes.
So if you had a signature verification employee whose time to approve on average followed this pattern, would you say that they are comparing signatures or they're not comparing signatures?
Objection, foundation, Your Honor. We don't know where this document came from, who made it, what it.
At this point in time, Mr. Valenzuela, if you're able to understand the question and you don't need any other information or clarification, and you're able to answer the question the way it's posed to you, you can answer it. If you can't, you can tell me you can't.
I don't believe I can accurately answer. I can make some assumptions like you're asking me to, but I don't know that particular data. I don't know who that user is. But if you're asking, does that bar look accurate as far as ups and downs, peaks and valleys, there would indeed be peaks and valleys when somebody's doing a disposition of a no signature 1 second, a no signature 1 second, a absolute consistent signature 2.4 seconds, or one that is not consistent that needs further evaluation. So we would see peaks and valleys in any user who reviews signatures.
Oh, okay. And so please explain for me what you mean by these here peaks and valleys. Is this a peak?
I'm inferring that's what that is, because I'm looking at a chart that have never seen before, but assuming it goes up and down, that is indication as you explain the axis to me.
Your Honor, sorry, finish your question.
Because we're both making assumptions, right?
You're asking me to make assumption. I am following along.
That's what I'm doing. I'm asking you to make assumptions.
Objection calls for speculation.
and that you, as the head of the elections department who oversee all signature verification, is this, if this represented, these are 134 represented an actual Maricopa County signature verification employee, would you say that that behavior is consistent with their oath of office?
Objection, Your Honor. It appears the counsel is using that as a demonstrative, and he's asking the witness to make assumptions that it's based on actual data from the 22 election, from which no foundation has been laid, and he's then will argue to the court that based on these assumptions, his answers are evidence that somehow should be used by the court to deliberate for the ultimate question. This is completely improper, and it deprives my client of their due process rights in this hearing.
Thank you. All right. Is this a demonstrative? Hold on, Mr. Blem. There was an objection. Is that a demonstrative exhibit? You started off by saying that that's a demonstrative exhibit.
Yes, sure.
Okay, that means that you've got a witness that you will use to lay the foundation for that.
Okay.
Now, you can ask questions. In fact, you already did yesterday. Ask all the questions about times for performing the analysis of whether signatures were similar and timing. But now you've apparently transposed that, some representation of that onto that demonstrative exhibit. It's not this witness's demonstrative exhibit. And so if you have a witness that you want to lay the foundation for that demonstrative exhibit, it's not, demonstrative exhibits don't come into evidence. They are there for demonstrating more effectively to the trier of fact what the witness is testifying to.
Understood, John.
So this is not a proper use of a demonstrative exhibits. You've already asked and had answers to all of the questions related to the data yesterday.
Understood, Your Honor.
So let's move on, please.
Okay, so you testified that you did participate in the production of that data that I represented to you is represented by this chart I asked you to make assumptions about, correct?
Correct.
Okay. What was your role? What role did you play in producing that data?
I apologize because it's going to sound overly broad, but I requested it of our RT and gave them specifics of what to pull for that data request.
Okay.
But I did not pull the data myself. I did not analyze the data. I submitted the ticket under the public records request.
All right. Do you have the ability to analyze this data?
I do. I have the raw data, but I don't have the ability to probably to that degree, as again, I indicated, I'm not a data analyst.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, it's asked and answered, so.
All right. I'm going to, I'm done, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, cross-examine. I told you yesterday, you can either go as far as you want, because as you all understand, Arizona is not limited like the federal system on cross-examination. You can go as broad as you want if it avoids calling the witness again, in your case in chief, or you can stick to what you wish to in this case. So who's doing the cross?
Yes, Your Honor, we will be calling this witness as our only witness on direct.
That's your right.
And I'm happy to do a minor cross to clean this up. I can do that on direct. It's really up to you, Your Honor, how you want to do this. I don't know if you need a break now or.
It's really not up to me. It's your choice as to how you wish to try your case. But I'm just emphasizing you have that. I'm signaling to you that I recognize that you have the right to recall this witness if you wish to in your case in chief. So you can either conduct cross as you see fit or not.
Your Honor, we're going to not question this witness at this time and wait and do all of our work on our direct,
Very
on
well.
our case.
Okay. Okay, without cross, there's no rebuttal. And so can we, I think somebody in the back, are you taking pictures, sir? Sir, are you taking pictures? Pardon me? I didn't hear your answer.
Your Honor, he said, yes, he did, but he won't anymore.
Okay. Okay. All right. There's just specific rules that are in place that we have to follow with regard to that. So I would just ask you to delete that. I could have my staff review that. I'm not going to have them come take your camera, but you already get it. You're not going to take more pictures. If you could just delete what you took in the courtroom, I'd appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to, let's see, we've only been at this for an hour. So, Mr. Valenzuela, I think we can excuse you to go ahead and take your place in the courtroom if you'd like to, sir. Thank you. Okay. Who is the next witness that you would call? I think you only got one witness left that you told me.
Correct, Your Honor. That is Mr. Spakeen.
Okay. Are you ready to oh.
No, Your Honor, right.
Just returning the, perfect. Thank you, Mr. Blem. I appreciate that. Okay.
Yeah, you can leave it.
Luz, how are you doing? Do you want to break now or do you want to keep going? Okay, we're going to continue because I have to check with the court reporter. So we'll begin with your minutes, Mr. Olson, knowing that we'll probably break around 10:30 for the mid-morning break. Okay. All right. Go ahead. Get your. Oh, I think he's.
Your Honor, plaintiffs will call it Eric Spakeen.
Mr. Spakeen. Come on forward, sir. You could raise your right hand and be sworn in, sir. Thank you, Mr. Spakeen. Have a seat. All right, Mr. Olson, you can begin.
Your Honor, I just want to move that monitor.
Oh, the monitor. Yeah. Right. That's just fine. That's fine, sir. Is that blocking anybody on the defense side now?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
We're good. Thank you.
Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Spakeen.
Good morning.
Could you please state your full name for the record?
Eric Spakeen, that's E-R-I-C-H. Last name Spakeen, S-P-E-C-K-I-N.
And Mr. Spakeen, where do you work?
I work for Spakeen Forensics. Our main office is in Michigan. I work primarily out of the Fort Lauderdale, Florida office. Now Hollywood, Florida, I should say.
And what does Spakeen Forensics do?
We're a full-service forensic firm. We deal with all aspects of forensic science. We deal with computer data recovery, crime scene crime scene reconstruction, firearms and tool mark, fingerprints, DNA, toxicology. But the section that I deal with is documents and inks.
Mr. Spakeen, you need some water. You coughed.
Have it ready. Thank you, Your Honor. And they have extra lined up for me, I think, too.
You're set.
Do you also work in the field of handwriting analysis?
Yes, so under documents and inks, there are two schools of thought. There's a document analyst that looks at just the document aspect, and then there's handwriting. I do both, and in the United States, nearly everyone that does documents also does handwriting. In some countries, they differentiate the two. But under document examination, under that title, it would be document examination, and handwriting would be part of that.
And is signature verification subsumed within handwriting analysis?
That would be another way to say it, or an application thereof from handwriting examination for determination of authorship. That's the way I would say it. But signature verification is saying the same thing, in my opinion. It's just not a phrase that I normally use. I would say determination of authorship, but it's the same thing.
And can you give me a more detailed description of your job that you perform at Spokane Forensics?
So my primary functions as it relates to work are documents and inks. I mean, I have administrative functions as well, but nobody's probably interested in those today. So I deal with the examination of documents and inks. So in the examination of documents, I examine documents for alterations, additions, and rewritings. Has a document been altered, changed, added to after the fact, and also perhaps when it was done. The examination of photocopiers, facsimiles, printers for determination of origin, date, time, associations. The larger part, especially now because we've had a death of one of our partners, is handwriting. I've been doing handwriting now for 30 years, a little over. And that is the determination of handwriting and hand printing. Of course, included in that is signatures for determination of authorship. Did someone write something or not? And the certainty to which you can express that conclusion. And that's what I deal with on a large scale. It seems like if you ask my wife every day, but 6 days a week probably.
And so I believe you testified that you have worked at Spokane Forensics for the approximately past 30 years.
Yes, I started in March of 1993, and now we're May of 2023, so 30 years and 3 months.
How many employees are at Spokane Forensics currently?
Between full and part-time, you would say?
Yes.
Well, instead of testing my memory to count every one, I'd say roughly a dozen.
Okay.
I could take a lot of time and give you an exact answer, but if that's good enough for you, roughly a dozen.
Can you describe the education and training that you have in the areas of expertise you just described with respect to document analysis, handwriting analysis?
Yes, I have a degree in chemistry. It's a Bachelor of Arts from the College of Natural Science from Michigan State University. That's my educational background. My training, I had a 2-year training program with Leonard Spokane. That's my father. It was in the examination of documents and signatures. He's the retired chief document examiner for the Michigan State Police. He retired in December of 1989. He trained me from 1993 to 1995 in the examination of documents and handwriting for determination of authorship as it relates to handwriting. I then had a 1-year training program with Richard Brunel. He's the retired deputy director of the ATF National Laboratory. He trained me from 1995 to 1996. That primarily focused on inks and papers, who manufactured an ink, when it came out, how long it's been on the paper, and are 2 inks the same or different? That's the primary fast answer to what that was. And that was from 95 to 96.
Do you hold any licenses related to offering expert opinions on handwriting analysis?
No, there's not a license per se that's granted by a state or local body. I am a licensed private investigator in the state of Michigan, which is required under laws of some states. I don't think Arizona is one of them, but I don't know for sure. But you have to be a licensed private investigator to store and maintain forensic data, primarily related to computer cases and computer data. I maintain that license in an abundance of caution, but it's not something that really plays into my normal workday, but I have it.
You described 2 instances of the training that you've undergone for handwriting analysis, I believe.
Yes, my father and Richard Brunel.
And do you maintain any, or strike that, do you perform any proficiency tests, annual tests that would allow you to show that you have maintained proficiency in these areas?
Yes, my laboratory many years ago, I think in 2007 or 2008, at the decision of Roger Bullhouse, who was our laboratory director at the time, decided that we would all go in our laboratory undergo proficiency testing. So we have an outside proficiency testing agency called CTS, Collaborative Testing Services. They're the ones who provide a lot of testing for government agencies as well. That's what they do. To be tested in handwriting and document examination for me, obviously our DNA people are tested in DNA, but that's what I'm tested in on an annual basis. And we have occasional additional proficiency tests that will be tested that are internal proficiency tests that are created by staff at the laboratory. But the main one is outside proficiency testing on an annual basis.
And when is the last time that you completed your outside proficiency testing in handwriting analysis?
With COVID, it changed things a little bit. So I can't remember if it's 1 year or 2 years ago. And the new one is coming up. So it's been ordered, but I haven't been delivered for 2023 yet.
Have you participated in any workshops with respect to scientific meetings on the issue of handwriting analysis?
Yes, I've attended many workshops on handwriting examination, expressing conclusions. Within that, determination of handwriting on mass scales. They have software in the forensic world for mass scale handwriting comparisons. I've looked at what they would say would be more difficult cases, like how to tell something that might be more difficult that a layperson wouldn't be able to see in terms of forgeries and how it's done. But that's probably one of the more frequent workshops is the examination of handwriting in some form or fashion, because it's one of the more common things that's encountered in my field by similar experts.
Who puts on these workshops that you're describing?
Well, generally speaking, it would be a relevant scientific organization. So it might be, I heard someone say American Board of Forensic Document Examiners. They don't actually have their own, but they have American Academy of Forensic Sciences that they're related to. They have workshops all the time. The American Society of Question Document Examiners has workshops. Here you have the Southwestern Association of Forensic Document Examiners, SWAFD. They will put on workshops. There are other regional organizations similar to that, such as MAFs or SAFs or, for different geographical areas that will put on workshops. I've also attended workshops from specialties. In other words, I've attended workshops at Canon on how Canon printers, technologies, and toners work. I've attended workshops on paper, on how paper is made at various factories. I've attended workshops on ink, on how inks and pens are made and ink is put in pens. Those are not the norm, but those happen on occasion, and I always try to make those.
Are there workshops specifically related to the issue of handwriting analysis?
Yeah, as I said, with various scientific bodies, that's probably one of the most common types of workshops that's available.
And do you participate in those workshops as well when made available to you and schedule permits?
When schedule permits is exactly how I was going to answer. Early on in my career, I attended a lot more frequently. As I've gotten busier and had more children, I've attended less frequently, but I still do attend. And I also present. I mean, I'm a frequent presenter of papers and workshops at various scientific bodies on this type of thing.
How many cases involving handwriting and signatures have you reviewed in your career?
So I only, when we say cases, just to be clear, I only keep track of a case by a submitter. So for instance, there could be a case with many, many signatures that are involved, but it's only one case. So if we take one case by single submitter, I would estimate it's probably at this point in my career in the range of 3,000, 2,800 to 3,200, given a range that I've examined as an examiner. And I'd estimate in my training period, I had probably around 700 that I either reviewed through the course of the work, or I was asked to review older cases for specific purposes for training supplement.
Have you testified as an expert witness with respect to, well, strike that. How many cases have you testified as an expert witness in your field?
I think the number is 413 today. This will be the 413th time. in my career, counting trials and depositions. I don't have it broken down specifically, but counting trials and depositions, sworn testimony, I think this is around 413.
And of those cases, how many did you testify on the issue of handwriting analysis, signature verification?
I can't give you a breakdown that fine. I can tell you it's the majority of them, but I don't know that it's 297 or 350 or I can't give you a number that specific. That would mislead to say I know it that specifically, and I don't. But the majority of them have been handwriting type cases.
So when you say the majority of them, you mean the majority of the 413 cases that you referred to earlier?
Correct. Over, by majority, well over half is what I mean.
In all of the cases from which you testified as an expert, have you ever been disqualified by any court?
There was one instance related to ink dating where a court read an opinion that had been thrown out and said we're not going to have testimony on that issue, but never with handwriting.
So when you say ink dating, what does that refer to?
Well, the issue was a very, very narrow issue, and it had to do with the estimation of age, the length of time an ink had been on paper by the chemical drying properties, and comparing it to an ink from the same sample that had been accelerated aged in a laboratory and saying the extraction properties were different. That's the technique, and that was in 2003. Now, every private laboratory I know uses that use of heat to accelerate the age of inks. But in 2003, the judge wasn't ready to hear that at that time for a myriad of reasons.
You mentioned that the court relied on a case that had been vacated. Can you explain that further?
Well, so the case that I'm talking about where the judge didn't allow testimony here in the United States was EEOC versus Ethan Allen, Northern District of Ohio. And I think it was 2002 or 2003. They quoted an opinion from a Hong Kong case that had myriads of terrible things to say about me. And it later came out that the judge didn't write that opinion at all. He just copied it from what the other side had written. And the Court of Final Appeal, they call it the CFA in Hong Kong, threw the decision out because the judge merely copied what the defense had written. And I don't remember the exact language. It's been over 20 years. But something like he didn't apply an independent thought, or I don't remember exactly, but something like that. Or they couldn't be satisfied he applied an independent mind. I don't remember exactly, though.
Can you describe to the court the number of different venues, jurisdictions in which you have testified as an expert in handwriting analysis?
Specific to handwriting? Let me think.
Well, let's
I'm just starting from
back up for a moment.
Uh-huh.
I'll withdraw the question. Can you describe to the court the number of cases or the number of jurisdictions and the names of the jurisdictions in which you have given testimony as an expert in your field?
So as an expert in the field, I can give the fast answer of 37 states and 11 countries. I can attempt to list most of the countries. The ULEX court in Kosovo, England, Jamaica, Canada, Mexico, Japan, Hong Kong, United States. I'm falling short on 3. Germany by submission. The Virgin Islands. And the last one currently stumps me, but I'll probably have it before I leave the witness stand if anyone cares for the 11th.
I believe you testified that you have offered expert testimony in over 30 states.
37, I believe, is the count.
And is Arizona one of those states in which you have offered expert testimony in your field of study?
Yes, Arizona is. The surrounding states, well, forgive me if my geography is slightly off, but when I say surrounding states, I mean the ones that are close. They might not touch, but California, Nevada, New Mexico, Colorado. I know Texas doesn't touch, but it's kind of close if you're from the East Coast. And then spreading all the way up to Washington State, Maine, and Florida, and everywhere in between of missing 13 states that I haven't.
And can you give just a general description of the clients that have retained you to give expert testimony on their behalf? Are they individuals? Are they companies?
So most of the clients that would retain me would be lawyers representing a party. It could be a governmental entity, it could be a company, it could be an individual. I do have some companies and some organizations that have retained me directly. The NCAA, the NBA, NHL Players Association, things like that. Big companies with internal reviews of certain issues. Handwriting is a common one. Did someone write a threatening letter? Did someone write a note on a bathroom wall? It's common that I'm retained by a company such as General Motors, a Ford, a Honda, Chrysler, that sort of thing in those instances. Large banks. I mean, anybody with big HR departments that conduct their own investigations on threats. I see that frequently. But still, the majority is attorneys that represent a party that would retain my firm.
What government agencies have retained you as an expert?
As an expert, Florida Department of Law Enforcement retained me to provide training to perform analyses. Many U.S. attorneys' offices, prosecutors' offices in many states, National Labor Relations Board, the DEA in forged prescription cases, SEC, and then usually it would be the U.S. attorney representing someone. So it might be a case, say, for an FBI prosecution, but the U.S. attorney is who retained me. So it wouldn't be directly from that agency. It would be a U.S. attorney's office, or I forget the national of the Fish and Wildlife, whatever that is. I've been retained by the U.S. attorney's office in those type instances.
And have you been retained by government agencies, particularly with respect to law enforcement, for your testimony regarding handwriting analysis?
Yes, I would say most of those were. With few exceptions, it might have only been regards to ink dating, like Orange County, California prosecutor's office retained me, but it was only related to ink dating. Los Angeles County prosecutor has retained me for both. I mean, we could go on and on, but yes, generally it's both, but in some instances, it's only one of them.
Have you ever testified in front of any legislative bodies on the issue of the subject matters of your expertise?
Yes, I have.
Can you describe that?
I testified here in Arizona at a hearing. I think it was a joint session of the Senate and the House together. It was a few months back. I've testified in the state of Michigan to I think it was the House of Representatives. It might have been the Senate as well. I'm not for certain. Those are the only two times I can think of.
Have you been appointed by any court for the defense in criminal cases?
Yes, I've been appointed by judges throughout the country many times for my expertise.
And did any of those appointments involve the subject of handwriting analysis for your expertise?
Most all of them. That's the most common thing that you would see in government practice, and I would say most of them, yes.
In your career, have you offered opinions or testified as an expert in election-related cases?
Offered opinions many times. I've testified in election cases, only a few. doesn't normally come to testimony on the broad spectrum of the cases that I see. Obviously, examined thousands and testified hundreds speaks to that. But I've offered opinions many times, yes.
Have you performed handwriting analysis in connection with election-related cases?
The majority of election-related cases would be related to handwriting, except for a few recent ones regarding printing processes and so on. But historically speaking, it was handwriting that I dealt with almost exclusively, but most still are handwriting.
Can you describe, when you're doing work related to elections and handwriting analysis, what is the work that you're doing?
So the most common thing that I've seen in the past when it relates to handwriting is in nominating petitions, recall petitions, that sort of thing, that are signatures required to put something on the ballot, either a person or a referendum, or whatever that's called. And they have to gather a certain number of signatures in order for that to be voted on. And I'm not an expert in politics, but that is how I understand it. Looking at those signatures to determine, more commonly, not is it the exact person of that signature, but did one person sign a bunch of these names all together? Or is there what we refer to as a round robin of 8 people sitting around a table, and person A signed signature line 1, and then 2 and 3, and so on. And so every 8th line, in general terms, is signed by the same person. So it's looking at overall characteristics of handwriting to determine is there common authorship that can be determined on a rotating basis like that. Not very often in election matters, the way the discovery works, are we provided signatures and known signatures to compare to of the people and be able to do it in a manner that comports with the discovery rules in election cases. So I don't see that too often in election cases like that. I have in the past, but that's infrequent. Usually it's more on petitions and ballots.
Are there other instances where you are tasked with evaluating large numbers of signatures?
Sure, there's other applications, of course. I mean, when I started, well, not maybe exactly when I started, but early on in my career, long distance slamming was a big thing. So you could go to a supermarket and you sign a piece of paper saying, change my long distance carrier to this person, and they give you a $50 gift certificate or a savings bond or whatever. I mean, they have some toaster, whatever, they have some gimmick, right? And then these people say, I never changed my long distance. Well, then the FCC investigates that and says, did this long distance carrier fraudulently switch them to their service? And in that case, then you have to go do the research and get collected signatures from DMVs in those states or voter applications, voters registrations, if you can get them, and then do the comparison that way. So that's an instance of it being done in a mass scale. Mass tort cases were certain documents signed by plaintiffs when there's the most recent one I can think of with an affidavit was the Birmingham hip replacement case. And there were hundreds of plaintiffs in that case. And the question was, were they signing their updated disclosures of some sort? And I don't remember exactly which disclosure, but were those signatures consistent with other documents they had signed in the court proceedings to that point in time? And there were hundreds of plaintiffs to look at and do that comparison. So it's something that I see regularly on top of election cases in a mass tort or other related settings.
So in this context, you have often performed an analysis of signatures to compare with a record signature to determine whether or not the signature is consistent or matches, correct?
I would just modify the question to say record signatures is the most common. So usually you have 1, 2, or 3, 2 and 3, or 4 or 5, whatever. You sometimes only have 1, but that's not the most common result of how many signatures you have. But sometimes it can be 1, yes. And you do the comparison with what you have. Absolutely.
Mr. Spakeen, are you familiar with the issues related to signature verification that are being presented in this case?
Hold on just a sec. I sense a change of gears from foundation to application. It's 10:30 and we need to take a break. So I'd rather not chop you off in the middle of what you're attempting to do, but take a break here, come back in the 15 minutes and let you resume, okay? So we'll be taking our morning recess of 15 minutes.